President Trump to Capitol Hill. He presses Senate Republicans on changing rules to speed up nominations. Strife and celebration. Tensions in Gaza continue one day after the U.S. moves its Israeli embassy. Early retirement? Pope Francis says something in his homily that startles the faithful. And premiere for a pope, a full-access movie about the Holy Father. On EWTN News Nightly for Tuesday, May 15th, 2018. Good evening from Washington, D.C., and thank you to those of you joining us from around the world for news from a Catholic perspective. I'm Lauren Ashburn. New tonight, a South Korea news agency says North Korea has canceled a high-level meeting with South Korea, and it's now threatening to call off a historic summit planned next month with the United States. The country says it's due to ongoing military exercises between the South and the U.S. This developing news comes as President Trump and Senate Republicans huddle on Capitol Hill ahead of midterm elections. Lawmakers tell us a Trump aide's comments disparaging GOP Senator John McCain did not come up. But GOP leaders say it is time for an apology. Capitol Hill correspondent Jason Calvi has more. Good evening, Jason.
Good evening, Lauren. The president and the GOP senators talked about the upcoming summit with North Korea, plus Iran and the U.S. elections. Now, Republicans will be defending their slim majority in the Senate this fall. But before lunch, President Trump used an annual tribute to fallen police officers to push his immigration policy.
We are calling on Congress to secure our borders, support our border agents, stop sanctuary cities, and shut down policies that release violent criminals back into our communities.
The president had lunch with Republican senators, including Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. Lindsey Graham of South Carolina tells me the president also rallied support for his CIA nominee, Gina Haspel.
At the end of the day, I think she's highly qualified, will be good morale booster for the agency because she comes within their ranks. The first female CIA director who's been a career professional, I think, is a good signal to send to the FBI.
Now the top Democrat on the Senate Intelligence Committee is backing Haspel. Senator Mark Warner of Virginia says Haspel wrote him to say the CIA should have never run harsh interrogation programs after 9/11. This increases the odds that she'll be confirmed. GOP leaders also said it's time the White House apologizes over the McCain comments. Those remarks were made in a closed-door meeting last week by White House communications aide Kelly Sadler. She dismissed the Arizona senator's opposition to the CIA nominee, saying his opinion was irrelevant because, quote, he's dying anyway. Lauren?
You spoke to several senators who are part of today's lunch meeting. Did they give you any insight into the upcoming North Korea summit?
Senator Lindsey Graham says the president spent a lot of time talking about North Korea, and he tells me the president seemed hopeful the United States can put an end to the communist nation's nuclear ambitions. Trump calls it a win-win for both countries. Lauren?
Capitol Hill correspondent Jason Calvi. Thank you, Jason. A group of Senate Republicans is urging Majority Leader Mitch McConnell to keep working through the August recess. They say they are ready to give up their nights and weekends to hammer out a budget deal.
Senator Perdue is leading that effort of reforming the overall budget process. Perhaps we ought to say, if Congress can't get the budget passed, they don't go home. That would fit pretty well here with the September 30th fiscal year end.
Funding for fiscal year 2018 runs out September 30th. In addition to a spending deal, the GOP is focused on confirming President Trump's judicial nominees this summer. The Trump administration stands by Israel as the nation faces backlash for using deadly force against Palestinians. 59 Palestinians were killed yesterday by Israeli troops, making it the deadliest day along the Israeli border since 2014. The violence came on the same day the U.S. Embassy opened in Jerusalem. White House correspondent Mark Irons reports. Good evening, Mark.
Good evening, Lauren. Israeli security forces say they were protecting their border from deadly attacks as less than 50 miles away, the U.S. Embassy was opened in Jerusalem. And today, the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations says Israel had every right to take action.
Who among us would accept this type of activity on your border? No one would. No country in this chamber would act with more restraint than Israel has.
U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Nikki Haley, defends Israel after protests turned deadly yesterday. The White House placing blame on Hamas, a Palestinian militant group the U.S. categorizes as a terrorist organization.
The responsibility for these tragic deaths rests squarely with Hamas. Hamas is intentionally and cynically provoking this response.
Today, protests continue on the Gaza border, partly because Palestinians are upset over the move of the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem. The U.S. now recognizes it as the capital of Israel, but Palestinians believe they have a rightful claim to the eastern half of the holy city. This man is a Hamas official. He says the embassy move will be a disaster for the Trump administration because they are partners with the occupation and its aggression against the Palestinians. Despite the protest, 50 miles away, a calm scene this morning in Jerusalem. A sign reads, "God bless Donald Trump." At yesterday's embassy festivities, White House advisors Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump were all smiles, but they were slammed on Twitter because their joy was shown alongside split-screen images of the deadly violence taking place along the Gaza border. In the wake of yesterday's violence, the United Nations Human Rights Office is saying Israel has repeatedly violated international norms by using deadly force instead of arresting people that assault its border. But the Israeli military says it prevented a significant attack yesterday, and at least 24 of the 59 Palestinians killed were Islamic militants. Lauren?
Mark, the U.S. is blocking a United Nations proposal to investigate this violence. Why?
Well, the State Department says the proposal is too one-sided and unacceptable to the U.S. because it does not mention Hamas's role in the incitement of violence along the Gaza border yesterday. Lauren?
White House correspondent Mark Irons, thank you. First Lady Melania Trump is recovering after having successful surgery for a kidney condition the White House says is non-cancerous. The president visited her this morning. He says on Twitter, quote, "Our great First Lady is doing really well. We'll be leaving hospital in 2 or 3 days. Thank you for so much love and support." Joining us now is Editor-in-Chief of The Hill, Bob Cusack. Welcome back, Bob.
Hey, Lauren.
Amazing to me that this Melania story, that the news of her having an operation on Monday did not leak. How is that possible?
Amazing. I mean, it is the biggest surgery for a first lady in decades. And I think that President Trump should take a lesson with his staff on Melania Trump, because you really don't have leaks, whether it's about her health or anything else. But with the president, we see leaks on a daily, if not hourly basis.
Let's talk about the one that is, in flames right now, which is the Kelly Sadler comment about John McCain that we just heard Jason Calvi talking about. GOP lawmakers are still furious that the White House is not apologizing for this joke. And he called yesterday, President Trump called the leakers cowards.
Right.
But nothing is happening. Why?
Well, this story is going into its second week. The Hill first reported this Thursday afternoon, and I thought it would be a big story. But the reason why it's continuing is because of the lack of apology. And Kelly Sadler called Meghan McCain and said, "I will publicly apologize."
To her father, right.
Right, and we have not seen that public apology, so that's why the story keeps going. But Republican senators today didn't mention it to Trump when he was up there. So that's why the story keeps going.
And it's a very easy rule of public relations. And you can contain stories by doing what is being asked of you over and over again by the public. True? Not
That's
true?
right. That's right. But President Trump doesn't like apologies. He rarely apologizes. So the question is, did anyone go to Kelly Sadler and say, "No, you're not going to publicly apologize"? We have not seen her appear publicly. That's just a matter of time, I imagine.
I would imagine nobody has a picture of her currently, and I'm sure that photographers are out there looking. Let's turn to Jerusalem. At the opening yesterday at the embassy, Pastor Robert Jeffress, who has said, he's a spiritual advisor to the president, and he has delivered the opening blessing, and he has drawn criticism for calling Islam and Mormonism a heresy from the pit of hell, and he says Jews can't be saved. Mitt Romney came out and said Jeffress shouldn't be giving the prayer because he was a religious bigot. Was this a misstep by the White House, or do people not care?
I think some people care, and certainly, I mean, this was a big deal. Remember, presidential candidates, Democrats and Republicans, have long promised this. Very controversial move. We saw with the violence. But it does distract from what happened yesterday, and certainly so does the violence. And that's what the White House has been very aggressive, saying, hey, listen, they're the ones who are doing the violence. They should take the blame, not us.
Right. I haven't heard a lot about Jeffress. And I did, and I would imagine if you didn't see the violence as much, you wouldn't realize exactly who did the opening prayer. It hasn't been wall-to-wall coverage like the protests have been. Do you think that the coverage has been fair? Palestinians, Israelis, and the nature of that conflict, that Israel believes that the Palestinians and Hamas and the terrorists are infringing upon their country, therefore they feel they have the right to fire?
Well, I think the pictures of the split screens were quite remarkable, whatever side you're on. I do think this is going to make it harder to have Mideast peace, and that's what Jared Kushner is tasked to do. But John Kerry couldn't get a deal. We haven't had a deal in forever. So Bill Clinton as well. Every president works on peace in the Middle East, so that was unlikely to happen anyway.
Bob Cusack, thank you so much for coming in, Editor-in-Chief of The Hill.
Thanks.
Ireland's Prime Minister is urging Irish voters to support an upcoming referendum that would relax the country's abortion laws.
We believe that we should face up to the reality of abortion and provide for it in our own country, but with the necessary restrictions.
The country will vote May 25th on whether to repeal the constitutional amendment banning abortion. If repealed, abortion would be legal for up to 12 weeks of pregnancy. Currently, abortion is illegal in almost all cases. Catholic bishops in Argentina are asking for prayers as lawmakers consider whether to legalize abortion there up to 14 weeks of pregnancy. Abortion currently is illegal unless the mother's life is in danger. The country's president says he is against abortion, but would not veto the bill if it passes. And Nicaragua's bishops are mediating talks that begin tomorrow between government officials and protesters. At least 65 people have been killed in demonstrations against President Daniel Ortega. He's under fire for raising taxes and slashing Social Security. Prosecutors in Australia have asked that all media be barred from the upcoming trial of Cardinal George Pell. A court tomorrow will consider the request. Cardinal Pell faces 2 trials on sexual abuse charges. He vigorously denies the claims. Pope Francis is meeting with 34 bishops from Chile. The goal is to map out a strategy after the sex abuse crisis that rocked the Chilean church. The Vatican says the Holy Father today handed the bishops a list of themes that they are to pray about until they meet again tomorrow. Pope Francis says, once again, he has thought about when it might be time to take leave of his flock.
Con questo spirito, con questa forza, con questo amore a Gesù Cristo.
The Holy Father made the comment during his homily today. Francis was reflecting on St. Paul discerning when to leave his flock in the care of others. The Pope may have also been referring to the Chilean bishops who are in Rome this week. Muslims in Afghanistan and around the world are preparing for the start of Ramadan. The holy month marks the first revelation of the Quran, according to Islamic belief. During the month, Muslims fast from dawn to sunset. Coming up, an update from a pro-life lawmaker on the fight to defund Planned Parenthood. And a good sign for this weekend's royal wedding. Abortion rights groups say they filed a lawsuit challenging the nation's most restrictive abortion ban. The measure prohibits most abortion once a heartbeat is detected, usually around 6 weeks. Iowa's governor signed the bill into law earlier this month. 4 states, including Pennsylvania, Oregon, Idaho, and Nebraska, are holding crucial party primaries today. Winners could give clues to what could happen in November's midterms and whether power would shift from Republicans to Democrats in the House of Representatives. Joining us now is Representative Andy Harris. He is Maryland's only Republican member of Congress. He is also a medical doctor, a practicing Catholic, and is pro-life. Representative Harris, thank you for joining us.
It's good to be with you again.
Pennsylvania has implemented map redistricting that favors Democrats. In Nebraska, typically Republican, 2 Democrats have a primary in Omaha. Now, you're a Republican from a state that traditionally votes Democrat. What is your party doing to hold on to the House?
Well, look, we're working hard. We're making sure that the American people understand that as we get this economy going, as we get the average person feeling better about themselves and their families and the opportunities in America, that they're going to realize that they're going to return the Republican majority. The courts have gone into Pennsylvania and other states and have required redistricting. We think, you either do it nationally or don't do it anywhere. But in a couple of states like Pennsylvania, they've done it. And again, we'll see tonight and then, of course, in November how that plays out.
A lawsuit challenging Iowa's heartbeat bill, we just mentioned this, was signed by the governor last week. Most restrictive abortion ban. And Nebraska's governor signed a state budget denying funds to abortion providers, including Planned Parenthood. You're pro-life and a doctor and speak for the unborn. Why are states, not Congress, leading the charge on defunding Planned Parenthood?
Well, the fact of the matter is we have a majority in the House that would defund Planned Parenthood. We have a president who would sign it, but unfortunately we have a Senate where we don't have 60 votes. But in some states, they do have majorities and governors who are willing to sign common sense legislation. The vast majority of Americans don't agree with public funding of abortions, especially late-term abortions, which Planned Parenthood does. So I think the majority of Americans are with us in terms of not funding abortion. And again, some of these governors are way ahead of the curve and probably will stay ahead of the federal government for a while. That being said, the Trump administration has allowed states to restrict the access of Planned Parenthood to Medicaid funds, which are the source of hundreds of millions of dollars for Planned Parenthood nationwide.
You spoke, speaking of this, at the Family Research Council today about the Supreme Court case Nifla versus Becerra, which will be decided soon. It's about preserving free speech for those who advocate for women and the unborn, most likely those in front of those Planned Parenthood centers. What would a pro-life ruling mean?
Well, the fact of the matter is that California is attempting, which has been attempted before in other scenarios, attempting to have the government force individuals to speak and say something they don't want to say. So, we have the right to protect our speech. We also have the right to protect us from not being required to say something the government requires us to say that we disagree with. That's what it's about with these pregnancy centers. They're being required to basically refer for abortions when the government has selected only pregnancy centers, crisis pregnancy centers, to apply this standard. They could have applied it broadly across anyone who is taking care of pregnant women. They could have broadened it to refer to other things like Women's Infant Children Nutrition Program, but no, they selected, again, in a carefully plotted way, select out pregnancy centers and then make them deliver a pro-abortion message that they don't want to deliver. It's an egregious violation of their First Amendment rights. I don't think it'll survive the Supreme Court. I think the Supreme Court will, I think by a healthy margin, overturn that California law.
Well, we'll find out in June when the rulings come out. Thank you so much, Representative Andy Harris, Republican member of Congress from the state of Maryland.
Thank you.
The Queen officially gives her written consent ahead of this weekend's royal wedding, but it's no ordinary letter. The handwritten document officially recognizes the marriage. It will be presented to Prince Harry and American Meghan Markle at the service. It includes 2 golden poppies, a nod to Markle's home state of California, and the Great Seal of the United Kingdom. Though there is apparently some bad news for the royal couple, a report says Markle's father is ill and originally reported he would not be at the wedding. Thomas Markle now says he hopes to attend if doctors allow him. He also says he would hate to miss walking his daughter down the aisle. Up next, a look inside previously secret Vatican Archives and a rare up-close look at Pope Francis on the big screen. Pope Francis says he's worried young people are getting lost in a virtual world. He says cell phones and technology keep us from real human contact. As a mother of 3, I know that firsthand. The Holy Father says we have to make sure that young people touch reality. And the Vatican's Doctrine Office, once shrouded in secrecy, is reminding scholars that it's actually a fairly accessible and transparent place. Scholars are convening in Rome to mark 20 years since the archives were unsealed. And Christopher Black is Professor Emeritus of Modern History at the University of Glasgow. He's relied upon the Vatican Archives for his academic research. Professor Black is co-author of The Roman Inquisition, Center versus Peripheries. He joins us from Rome. Professor, as a scholar, what is in these archives?
Evidence on how the Inquisition operated in the 16th, 17th, 18th centuries, and a little in the 19th century. How the Church, through the Inquisition, controlled, influenced, or failed to influence Catholic life and Catholic belief.
Well, it was one of several inquisitions, the Roman one carried out by the Church to root out heresy, yet everybody thinks mainly of the Spanish Inquisition. Tell us what we can learn from those archives about the Roman Inquisition and how they've preserved the knowledge.
We know that they operated rather differently from the Spanish and Portuguese, which were under monarchical control. The Roman Inquisition was rather different under the popes and cardinals. In my opinion, it was more lenient, it was less penetrating and less dogmatic than the other 2 major inquisitions. The archives, as they've been revealed over the last 20 years, show the differences in part between the Italian scene and the others.
There has always been a lot of false information about the Inquisitions. How has this archive and modern technology helped us to understand them better?
Because it's in revealing how cases were operated, how diplomacy worked between the center of the Congregation of the Holy Office, as we call it in Rome, how it worked in the different parts of Italy. And this can destroy all sorts of myths, legends about how the Inquisition worked or did not work.
The secrecy behind keeping these documents is now over, would you say? And are you having a good relationship with the Vatican in finding out some bad information?
There is now good cooperation between the runners of the archive and scholars, Catholic, non-Catholic, atheists, whatever. There's a good relationship on the whole between us, and we are not revealing any great scandals, and we're undermining quite a lot of bad myths for the benefit of many Catholics.
Professor Christopher Black from the University of Glasgow.
That's right.
Finally, tonight, a movie about Pope Francis makes its premiere last weekend at the Cannes Film Festival.
Buonasera.
Wim Wenders, an Oscar-winning filmmaker, was granted extensive access to the Vatican's video library and to the Pope himself. Wenders conducted 4 lengthy interviews spread out over 4 years, all inside Vatican walls. Francis becomes the first pontiff to participate in a movie like this. Pope Francis, a man of his word, hits theaters on Friday. For all of us here at EWTN News Nightly, to all of you around the world, thank you for watching. I'm Lauren Ashburn. Let's keep in touch online. Follow me at Lauren Ashburn on Twitter and Lauren Ashburn EWTN on Facebook. Good night and God bless.